An illustration tonight about just how far left some Democratic presidential candidates seem willing to go to get the nomination. At least 3 of them are now supporting a position Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama would not take: reparations for African Americans. With that, let's bring in our panel: Democratic strategist Zach Friend, the president and co-founder of Real Clear Politics, Tom Bevan, and a senior columnist at townhall.com, Kurt Schlichter. Gentlemen, great to have you.
Good to be here.
Zach, I'm going to play the sound from Senator Kamala Harris, and I'll ask you to react to it.
So when we're talking about recognizing the inequalities, the inequities, it's not about saying I'm trying to take from those who have achieved success if they've played by the rules and worked hard. Good for you, keep it. But I am saying we need to be honest and address that not everyone has an equal opportunity to access to success, and we've got to address that.
So, Zach, is $1 trillion or more to the African-American community the way to go?
Well, I think a couple things on this. I happen to know Senator Harris personally, and she definitely is a social justice person, and I'm not surprised that this is a position that she's taking. But I think that overall, issues like this are going to continue to come up in a Democratic primary when you don't have a clear front runner.
Right.
In these kinds of issues, I mean, similar in 2016 when you had 17 Republicans running, one of the ways that the now President Trump really differentiated himself was by taking, I think, what a lot of the Republican establishment would have said were pretty controversial stands on immigration. So, too, I think in the Democratic primary, you're going to have some stances that maybe don't jive with a lot of the general election voters in the Democratic base. And so I think that there's going to be some stuff coming up over the next month or 2 months that will be having the same conversation.
Well, Senator Harris is not alone. Take a listen to Senator Elizabeth Warren tonight in Manchester, New Hampshire.
Ugly history of racism. We need to confront it head on, and we need to talk about the right way to address it and make change.
Tom, is there a fear of being seen as a moderate if you're not all in on these liberal ideas?
Well, certainly that's where the energy is on the Democratic side is pulling everybody leftward. I mean, but this is an issue that is terribly unpopular in the mainstream of the country, and this is one that's going to be hard for Democrats who go on record supporting something like this to come back in a general election and sort of a position they're going to climb down from. And I always take these issues and look at them. This election is going to boil down to about 7 states. All the rest are already pretty much decided. And you're talking about, so how do all these various issues, including this one, play in places like Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Florida? I mean, that's where it's going to matter. And it's not a popular position. So I think this is a real problem for Democrats.
The National Review, seeing politics here, writing, quote, "The proposals are not intended to mitigate evil. They're intended to make Elizabeth Warren or Kamala Harris or Kirsten Gillibrand President of the United States." Kurt, your reaction?
Oh, well, look, I couldn't support this more. I'm a conservative. I want the Republican to win. And Tom's absolutely right. This kind of moral idiocy is poison in the swing states. I mean, I want to see these guys go into Ohio saying, hey, guys, everybody, reparations. That's the real issue. Not the economy, not getting your kids out of endless wars, reparations. But, Mike, I'm still puzzled. How does this work? My beautiful wife escaped from the Democrats' favorite communist hellhole, Cuba. How much does she owe? And my great-great-grandfather, he fought with the Union Army. Do I get a discount? How does this work? It's stupid. It's immoral. And I want the Democrats to keep doing it and self-destruct.
Zach, all indications are this is going to be a really crowded field, which we expect to maybe up to 25 or so candidates. Is the critical thing to make sure a chunk of the left base is fired up about you?
Well, we have an exceptionally fired up base. If you think about the 2018 midterm elections, it was clear that there were a lot of new voters turning out. However, the reason the Democrats won the House were actually in some of these suburban swing districts that actually do not have the same type of fired up base that some of these other districts had. So I agree with Tom in the sense that you're going to have to find a way to parse that difference, to actually win through the industrial Midwest. Ultimately, in 2020, the election still will be won in the states that are always the swing states over the last 20 years.
Tom, what do Vice President Biden and Senator Sherrod Brown, the folks who could play well with those white working class voters, do? Do they jump on the repatriations or reparations bandwagon, or do they stay out of it?
Well, we'll have to see. I mean, I think Sherrod Brown has been sort of cautious in some of these positions, Medicare for all, et cetera. And he talks about it in terms of, you know, he wants to be practical and get things that, and Amy Klobuchar says the same thing. She doesn't want pie in the sky. She wants things that can actually be achieved in the short term. Certainly reparations is not one of those things. So, you know, the Democrats are in a dilemma here because privately you will hear Democrats say we need a white male to win the 2020 election. Publicly, though, they're not saying that. And in fact, it's quite the opposite. People are looking toward, you know, females, persons of color. Those are sort of the cachet for Democrats who are running in this primary election. So it's a real dilemma for Democrats, I think, come the general election.
Kurt, how alarmed do you think some of these white male potential candidates are at this point? You heard Bernie Sanders complain about it, but you have maybe Joe Biden, Senator Sherrod Brown. Should they be alarmed that this may not be the year for a Democrat white male?
I think they should, because the Democrat Party is completely obsessed with race. Now, I want it to be because I want them to lose. And here's the dirty little secret about Republicans. You get us a conservative, we'll happily vote for a differently abled lesbian Hindu of color if that person is going to support a strong military, a strong economy, the First, Second, and even Third Amendments. We're looking for values. They're looking for a check in the box, and that's why they're going to lose next year.
Gentlemen, thanks so much. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
The Smollett hoax is one of many that fit a pattern. Angry Trumpkins unleash vicious and hate-filled attacks against sexual or racial minorities. Now, here are just a few of more than dozens that are out there. In December 2016, a Muslim woman said she was attacked by 3 white Trump supporters in New York City on the subway. She said they tried to rip off her hijab. Well, it never happened. And then one day after the 2016 election, a student at Bowling Green in Ohio said that white males wearing Trump shirts threw rocks at her and hurled racial slurs. Protests in a university town hall ensued. The student made up the entire incident. And in September of last year, a woman told police on Long Island she was driving home when 4 teens confronted her and yelled, "Trump 2016." And then they told her, quote, she didn't belong here. That, too, was made up. Here now is Dinesh D'Souza, conservative filmmaker and author. Dinesh, what does this tell us about the current political climate and the culture today?
Well, the first thing it tells us is that these fake racial incidents have become normalized. When the Tawana Brawley case broke a generation ago, this was a bogus racial incident involving an African-American woman who had claimed to have been abused and battered. It was anomalous. People really had to scratch their heads because this was such a freak episode. But now there's a procession of these bogus incidents, of which the Jussie Smollett case is only the latest. Now, I think for people watching, they're a little baffled because they probably think, what kind of dementia causes someone to do this? Why would somebody fabricate an incident? And I think that we're dealing here not so much with personal dementia, but what can be called ideological dementia. You touched on it earlier. There's a narrative here that they're trying to advance. The narrative is that the MAGA supporters, the Trump people, are a bunch of racists. Now, it's obviously a tribute to the Trumpsters that they are not racist, because the Jussie Smollets, despite being black, despite being flamboyantly gay, are going out there looking for people to pick on them, and nobody is. So the facts are not supporting the narrative at all. So they figure, why not make up the facts? Why not adapt the facts to the narrative rather than the other way around? And I think this is the demented psychology, the demented progressive psychology that drives these racial faked incidents. And the second reason for them is that they get away with it.
Well, and this is what my point, Dinesh, is that conservatives are quick to sort of say, oh, let's move on. I don't want to dwell on this. And the fact that we don't have people in jail after what happened to Brett Kavanaugh, with that Julie Swetnick, what Avenatti was pushing, all the promises of evidence of how he was drugging people, spiking the punch bowl, gang rapes, you know, and then people just want to move on from that? I say no way. Otherwise, that stuff continues. Same deal with this Smollett case. It occupied everybody's time, and the Chicago PD was demonized. And, of course, Trump supporters are made out to be these horrible, awful, terrible, rotten people because, look, your people are doing this to this poor actor.
It's important to realize that the Jussie Smollett incident is a hate crime. It's a hate crime, but in the opposite direction. Remember, if Jussie Smollett basically wanted to go and beat himself up, that's not against the law. The real crime here was attempting to pin this blame on a bunch of people who did nothing, on innocent people. And it is this idea of trying to ultimately frame Trump supporters for something that Smollett himself perpetrated. So he's the perpetrator masquerading as the victim. It's very important that he be held accountable for that. Otherwise, the left basically thinks, let's keep trying this stuff. When it works, it works. When it doesn't, we get away with it.
Dinesh, excellent analysis as always. Thank you so much.